Rory Sutherland is a vice chairman of Ogilvy UK, one of the world's biggest advertising agencies, and one of the most interesting thinkers on human psychology and decision-making. He gave a great talk on 2025 Welcome Conference, and even though the talk was about marketing and business, I believe it applies perfectly also to investing, especially when it comes to portfolio structure. And it starts with bees.
What happens here is that they have a thing called the waggle dance, and they do a little dance, and the bees can explain to the other bees where there's a reliable source of pollen and nectar, and most of the bees take that information on board and they head off 4 miles to the northwest where they've been told reliably that there's some pretty good nectar or pollen to be had. But then they discover that 20% of bees ignore this and just go off at random. And they thought this is pretty strange, because bees have been around for 20 million years, that's sort of 20 times longer than humans. And they thought evolution doesn't like inefficiency. Why on earth would evolution tolerate this appallingly low level of compliance with the waggle dance? Why haven't we evolved bee compliance officers who come in and say, we must all obey the waggle dance so that we meet our pollen collection target for Q3 or whatever? And then they modeled as a complex system, and they realized that if you didn't have the random bees, the hive gets trapped in a local maximum and it starves to death. 3 things happen. It can't grow because it's entirely reliant on its existing sources of pollen and nectar. Can't grow. Can only just be more efficient at what it already is. Secondly, it gets over-optimized on the past, so when the environment changes, if some cows eat their favorite flowers, they don't know where to go next, so they lose the capacity for adaptation. And finally, they can't get lucky, because most of those bee journeys are a waste of time, but every now and then a bee comes back with something much more valuable than pollen. It's information about a new discovery of pollen. And provided the bee shares that information, that's like one of Jeff Bezos's 1,000-run payoffs. It's disproportionately valuable.
And that is one of the most elegant arguments for portfolio structure I have ever heard. Just replace bees with capital. Your core portfolio, the 80%, should behave exactly like the waggle dance followers. Strong companies, proven business models, reliable cash flows, businesses that will be around in 20 years, regardless of what the economy does. This part of your portfolio is not trying to get lucky. It is trying to make sure you do not lose your money and that your wealth compounds quietly over time. But then there is the other 20%. This is your exploration budget. And the key word Sutherland uses is disproportionate, not just good returns. Disproportionate returns. That is what you are hunting for with this part of the portfolio. Most of those journeys will be a waste of time. That is the deal. You accept that upfront. But every now and then, one of those random bees comes back with something extraordinary. And when it does, it pays for every failed trip. The hive that only follows the waggle dance is effective, but it is fragile and it cannot grow beyond what it already knows. Your portfolio should not be built that way either. And if you would like to find new ideas for your portfolio, quickly see the strengths and weaknesses of hundreds of companies and easily value any company on the market, then head to stockinvesting.academy and check out the premium membership, which gives you access to all the features on this platform. Okay, let's get back to Rory Sutherland.
A successful life, a successful business, a successful approach to life requires that you do 2 things. There's what you might call Walmart shopping, where you know what you want in advance and you pursue it and try and accomplish it as efficiently and effectively and as cost-effectively as you possibly can. And then there's TJ Maxx life, which is you swan around just hoping you'll get lucky, right? Now, I've got friends who can't understand TJ Maxx. And they go, I went in there looking for a yellow cardigan and I couldn't find anything. I go, you fucking idiot. I'm sorry. You don't go into TJ Maxx looking for something specific, right? You go in like a shark, okay, and you basically swim around the aisles, largely pointlessly, until you go, shit, oh, look what I can buy here. That's how it works, okay? Now, My point is, this is actually a philosophical point, which is the ratio of the effort you spend in your life towards pursuing the exploitation of what you already know relative to the effort and resources you devote to exploring what you don't know.
And this is where he puts a name on something most investors never think about consciously. Walmart shopping. You know exactly what you want. You go in, you find it, you leave. And that is how most of us approach investing. We look for strong, reliable, well-known companies, businesses with a long track record, growing dividends, durable competitive advantages. And honestly, that is exactly the right thing to do with the majority of your capital. There is nothing wrong with being a Walmart investor 80% of the time. That discipline is what builds lasting wealth. But Sutherland is pointing at something important here. If that is all you ever do, you are never discovering anything new, and your returns will be capped by what the market already agrees is valuable. Howard Marks understood this better than almost anyone. Before he built Oaktree Capital into one of the greatest investment firms in the world, he made a decision that most serious investors at the time thought was borderline absurd. He started buying the debt of deeply distressed, struggling, sometimes nearly bankrupt companies. This was not Walmart shopping. Nobody had a clear map for this. He was wandering the aisles, and what he found there made him a billionaire. That is TJ Maxx investing. You are not going in looking for something specific. You are giving yourself a chance to stumble upon something that market has not yet figured out. This is not an argument for recklessness. It is an argument for giving yourself permission to explore within certain boundaries. 20% of your portfolio should be the maximum. Enough to matter if something works, not enough to destroy you if it does not.
In one of the famously worst decisions in business history, a man called Mike Smith, working for Decca Records, turned down the Beatles. And instead, he signed this band called Brian Poole and the Tremolos. And by the way, who aren't a bad band. They had 2 number-1 hits. They went on for about 15 or 20 years. In some ways, Brian Poole was probably a better singer than anybody in the Beatles. It wasn't, by the way, a crazy decision. I'm going to defend this guy. One of the reasons they chose them was also because Brian Poole and the Tremolos lived close to London, whereas the Beatles came from Liverpool, so their travel expenses would be higher. Probably not procurement's finest hour, that one, I have to say. Okay? But I looked at this decision and I said there was nothing irrational about signing this band. They had several number-1 hits. They're a very talented band. He also liked the Beatles. The person who made the mistake was someone else, he gets the blame, who said you can only sign 1 band. Why? Okay? Just because 2 bands happen to audition on the same day doesn't mean you can only sign 1 of them. What he wanted to do was the safe bet, Brian Poole and the Tremolos, wild card, Beatles. But he was only allowed to do 1. When we're only allowed to do 1, we'll always do the safe bet. We won't do the risky thing, because you get much more blame for being eccentric than you do for being boring, broadly speaking, in business.
We tell ourselves we can only make one kind of decision, the responsible one, the one nobody can criticize. And so we never sign the Beatles. Not because we did not see something interesting there, but because we were only allowed to pick one. And picking the wild card felt impossible to defend if it went wrong. The 80-20 structure we talked about earlier is really just a way of giving yourself permission to sign both bands. Your core portfolio is solid, reliable, defensible. You can explain every position to anyone. But the 20%, that is your experimental record label, the place where you are allowed to be wrong, where failure is expected and built into the math from the beginning, where you can give yourself a real chance of something disproportionate. Because if you never allow yourself the right to experiment, to be wrong, to explore something the market has not yet validated, you will always make the safe bet. And there is nothing wrong with that, but you may lose an incredible opportunity along the way. I think Rory Sutherland explains it best.
Basically, you could look at it, explore is a facts tail distribution. In other words, the exceptional events, the freak events, disproportionately affect your overall payoff. It's high variance stuff. It's poker. It's backgammon. It's got a doubling cube. It's not kind of chess where, when you think about it, chess is a bit stupid really, isn't it? Because you can play the best played game of chess in your whole life and you get 1 point for a win, okay? That's why you tend to find entrepreneurs at casinos, not at chess clubs.